The question is maximum strength of k disjoint subarrays, and the question will be provided with a zero indexed array of integer num, that is of length n, and a positive integer k. And the strength of x subarrays is defined as, like, there are x subarrays, and the first subarray sum into x minus second subarray sum into x minus 1 plus third subarray sum into x minus 2, so on and so forth until 1. And x is always odd, as mentioned in the question, that is k is odd. And you have to return that maximum value, that is the maximum possible strength that you can have by choosing that k disjoint subarrays from nums. The strength should be maximum, return that. And that is not mandatory to cover the entire array, that's up to you. So return that maximum possible strength. So let me make it more clear. So in the question, you will be provided with an array nums of length n, and you have to return the maximum strength. Let's say if you are choosing the k subarrays, then let's say you have choose the subarray 1 over here, 2 over here, 3rd over here, and you need to choose the 3 subarrays only. Let's say x is odd as mentioned. Now the sum is s1, s2, s3. Now what you would do is, first one would be always plus s1 into 3 minus s2 into 2. This k has reduced, plus the sum is 3, s3 into 1. So this would be your sum. So you need to return that maximum sum. The subarray should be disjoint, like there should be no elements that is common in both, like the overlapping elements. Let's say this two subarrays is not a valid one. You need to choose this disjoint subarrays. So in the question, that is the value for n is up to 10 to the power 4. That is less than equal to 10 to the power 4, and the value of k is less than equal to n. That the value of k can also go up to 10 to the power 4. So we can say that. But there is also one thing mentioned, that n into k will always be less than equals to 6. It means we can for sure have a dp of n into k, because as you have seen that n into k will be less than equals to 10 to the power 6. So for sure you can have a memory of 10 to the power 6. So for each and every element, let's say dp of ij would be representing that from the ith index, if you have a value of j, this is k basically. If you have k equals to j from this particular index, what would be the maximum sum? So if you can calculate this, so for sure you can return this. So let's say if we have an array, anything, let's say x1, x2, x3. So for any element, what you can do basically, to include this in the previous subarray only. Let's say we declare a variable previous also. If the previous is 1, it means the previous subarray, it means the previous element got picked. And if the previous is 0, it means the previous elements got unpicked. It means if you are standing over here and the previous is 1, it means x got picked by some subarray. So x1 got picked. If the previous is 0, it means x1 was not picked. So what is the benefit of this previous? So you have now, let's say there will be function index, we will be passing on the current value of k and the original value of k that was initially, that the initial value of k, and there would be previous also, and you have dp also. So for any index, what you can do is, if the previous is 1, it means the previous element got picked. So you can include this element in the previous subarray only. Let's say x1 got picked by some subarray and you are starting at x2. So you have two conditions, like pick x2 for your new subarray. Don't pick x2, or pick x2 but for your previous subarray. If the previous is 1, then only this condition will be fulfilled, that include this x2 in your previous subarray only that has picked x1, because x1 if hasn't picked, then there was x0. So you cannot include that x2 in your previous subarray, because this would not be a subarray. So if your x1 got picked and you are standing at x2, so what you can do is include x2 in your previous subarray. So if your current value is k, it means for the previous subarray, what was that k value? That was 1 basically. K plus 1. So what would be your summation that you will be adding to? That is k plus 1 into nums of I, And how would you decide that minus or plus? You can decide it by the difference, that is the value of original k minus k. If it is even, it means you have to do a plus. If it is odd, it means you have to do a minus 1. So by this value, you can decide your minus 1 or plus 1. So if the previous is 1, it means the previous element got picked. So you can include your element in the previous subarray only. So for that, the sum would be the k plus 1, and the minus 1 sign can decide it by this. Because let's say your original k is 3 and you are standing at with a value of 3 only. So the first value, that is 3 minus 3, would be even. It means the first subarray is a plus. We know that the second subarray is minus. So if it is 0, then 1 would be minus 1. So you are standing with a k with a 3. It means you are standing for the first subarray. So if it is even, then you have to do a plus. If it is odd, then you have to do a minus. So with the current value of k and the initial value of k, you can decide plus and minus. So we can decide the sign with the original k and the k. And if you are including that x2 with the previous element, so you currently have k for the second subarray, but for the previous subarray, the value of k was greater. That was k plus 1. If you are picking some element, let's say for my subarray, so I'll pass a k minus 1 that, okay, pick your subarray. Because I have already picked one subarray, so k will get reduced by 1. So if I want to include this x2 within x1 only, so I need to do a k plus 1. Because for that, the subarray was different. And the strength is basically x1 into k plus, if x2 we want to include this in another subarray, then x2 into k minus 1. But what if we want to x1 and x2 within the kth array? Then this would be our sum. So our sum currently have x1 into k. Now if we want to include this x2 in the previous subarray only, so we have to do the x2 into k plus 1. So let's say x2 into k plus 1, you'll be doing that. So if you want to include this in the previous subarray and call the function as, if you're standing at the ith index, I plus 1, comma, what you will pass. And the value of k will remain the same because you haven't picked for the current subarray. You have picked for the previous subarray only. So your k value will be k only. And original k will remain the same. And the previous will be previous. Because if the previous was picked, then only we have performed this. So you have picked this element also. So pass the previous only, or you can pass 1 also. Because the previous element was picked and you have picked the current element also. But what if you want to include this element to the new subarray? In this situation, you haven't created a new subarray, so you are passing the value of k itself only, because what was existing, you have added this value in the existing subarray, so the number of subarrays will remain the same as new subarray hasn't created. So what if you want to create a new subarray? So you can pick this. So if you are picking this, that would be k into, just decide your sign with the value of this original k minus k. Now, k into that nums of I plus, if passing fun with I plus 1, comma k minus 1, comma original k, and if you are picking this, just pass 1. But if you are not picking this, as you have created new subarray, so that's why k minus 1, that we have created one more subarray, so reduce the value of k, and as well as that original k and the 1 that you have picked the current element, that's why previous is 1. Now if you are not picking this, so just call the function with I plus 1, the value of k will remain the same because you haven't created new array, and the original k will be remain same, and previous would be 0 because you haven't picked this element, so this would be 0 for the next element. So let me show the code and it will be moved. In the question, as you have given with the nums, we have just calculated the size of the num and we have created a 3D array in which the first one for the index and the second one is the current value of k, and the third one is previous, then the last element got picked or unpicked. So initially what we have passed the index value as 0, the nums array, the value of k that was given in the question, the dp, the value of original k, that is the initial value of k, and 0, that the previous element got unpicked. because we have to newly start from the zeroth index, that you have to create your new subarray. You cannot add this to your existing subarray because you don't have any existing subarray. So that's why we have passed a value of 0. So if your index size is greater than or equal to num size, it means you have an index now that is not present in our array. So if the value of k is 0, it means you have created that k subarray. So return 0. Yes, you haven't created a subarray. So return a -1 value. So to get a maximum sum, because we want a maximum, so we have returned a minimum value, because this is not valid. You have to create that k subarray. So if that value has already created for int k and previous, so we'll return that only. Is we have initialized that answer with, if the value of k is 0, so you can pick this element also or cannot be. So if the value of k is 0, so we can have a 0 answer, as we'll have a max, that minimum answer, because we need to return that maximum sum. So we are initializing this with a minimum value. If the previous is 1, it means it got picked that previous element. And also the num size minus index, it means you are left with k elements, right? The remaining elements is greater than k. So it means you can include this element with the previous subarray. If you can include this, so what would be your answer is the maximum of answer comma the value of current is to decide the sign. So if it is even, then current would be 1. If it is odd, then current would be 0. So if the current is 0, it means you have to do a -1 sign, else +1. But in this case, it will be different. The current value of k is to create a new subarray. But what if you want to include this in the previous subarray? So for the new subarray, the value is 0. It means for the previous subarray, it would be 1. So if the current is 0, it means you would have to have a negative sign for the new subarray. So it means for the previous subarray, you would have a positive sign. So that's why we have done a 1 over here. It means current is 0. So the new subarray would have a minus sign. It means if the current is 0, so the previous subarray would have a plus sign. So that's what I'm saying. If the current is 0, so the previous subarray would have a plus sign. If it is 1, then it would have a minus sign. So, and the value of k was for the previous array was k plus 1. Because if you want to create a new subarray, the value is k. But for the previous subarray, it would have a k plus 1 value. And the current value of nums, as well as we have passed the index +1, because as we haven't created any new subarray, so the value of k would remain the same, the original k and the previous value. We can pass 1 over here also, because as previous is 1, so it will be same only. Now, if the value of k is greater than 0, it means you can pick any element or cannot pick. So if the value of k is greater than 0, what we have done is, if the current value is 0, it means you have to have a minus sign. It means you are at an odd index, and for all the odd index, on the base of 0 based indexing, the value is -1. As you can see, in the first we have a plus sign, in the second element we had a negative sign. So that's what I'm doing is, if the current is 0, there will be minus sign. If the current is greater than 0, there will be plus sign. And the value of k into that element present at the index into what I'm doing is 1L to convert into the long, and then plus the find. That's calling the function itself, that is with the index +1. As we have created a new subarray, that's why we are doing k -1, and the original key and the previous. As we have picked the current element, that's why we are passing 1. And for not pick, increment your index, nums, k would be as it is, dp original and 0. Because you haven't picked this element, that's why we are passing 0. And at the end, maximum of all the things and dp of nk previous, assign this answer and return. So that's it. I hope it's clear. Thank you for watching.